Thank you. Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Toko Didiza, the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Honorable Refilwe Mtsweni-Tsipane, the Deputy President of the Republic of South Africa, Honorable Paul Mashatile, Honorable Members of Parliament, Honorable Speaker and Chairperson, I'd like to begin by thanking the honorable members of this House for a rather robust and enriching debate. The speeches that were delivered the whole of Friday clearly demonstrate that there is a common appreciation amongst members of this august Parliament that a debate of this nature, and indeed the work of this Parliament, is about something far bigger, far more important than just mere politics. It is about the future of our country and its people. It is about a future of opportunity, a future of promise that the people of South Africa have mandated us through their votes on the 29th of May to advance. The nation's eyes are on this Parliament and all of us that they elected to represent them. We wholeheartedly endorse the call by Honorable Moimang, who, when he spoke here, said that this Parliament should become the epicenter of the advancement of the will of the people of South Africa. Much of what has been said during this debate has confirmed that we have entered a new era in South African politics. It is an era of hope. It is an era of optimism for the people of our country and for its future. We must demonstrate in word and in deed that this is an era of a government of national unity and not a fleeting convenience. We've had and will continue to have points of divergence, as the spirited nature of this debate has demonstrated. At the same time, we all understand what is expected of us by those who put us here. They expect us to chart this country towards the ultimate goal of a better life for all, talking to each other and working together, and in the end, pulling in the same direction. That is what the people of South Africa expect of this House. That direction is towards the implementation of the medium-term development plan that's being crafted, the program that will guide the 7th administration. This plan will be based on the 3 strategic priorities that are outlined in the opening address last week. As we said, our priorities are inclusive growth and job creation, reducing poverty and tackling the high cost of living, and building a capable, ethical, and developmental state. For much of the 6th administration, we worked to address the challenges that beset our country and impeded our growth, such as state capture, lack of reforms, COVID-19, load shedding, and the breakdown of our state-owned enterprises. We also worked to overcome the silo mentality that pervaded the work of government and which in the past had contributed immensely to inefficiency, duplication, and waste of resources. As the Honorable Kwankwa has rightly put, it is important that whatever policies and programs the Government of National Unity develops, they must be aligned to the social realities that are facing our people. I couldn't agree more. What will define the 7th administration's work is strategic alignment of the priorities we have set out, together with greater efficiencies, the focus on the optimal use of resources. On Thursday evening, I said that the program of government is grounded in the National Development Plan, the African Union's Agenda 2063, and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It is important to examine the progress we have made as a nation in addressing the challenges our people face. Last year, South Africa submitted its 3rd country report to the United Nations on our progress towards meeting the Sustainable Development Goals. We highlighted in our report important trends towards meeting the Sustainable Development Goals targets in eradicating poverty and hunger, in good health and well-being, in inclusive and equitable quality education, in the provision of clean water and sanitation, in climate action, in building strong institutions for peace, justice, and other matters. Government's 30-year review report and the results of the Census 2022 are testament to the considerable progress the democratic state has made in pursuing equitable and sustainable development. On eradicating poverty and hunger, more indigent South Africans are accessing grants as part of an extensive social security net to mitigate the worst effects of poverty. As I said in the opening address, in focusing on reducing the cost of living, local government must strengthen its implementation of the indigent policy so that the old, the infirm, and the poor are able to get assistance with the payment of basic services. 60% of our national budget, as we know, is spent on the social wage and programs vital to reducing poverty and supporting the poor. This we do so that we can continuously make efforts to give our people a better life. When the worst global health emergency in modern times struck in the form of COVID-19, we were able to shelter society's most vulnerable through the provision of COVID grants, a scheme to support workers' wages, and support to businesses affected by the lockdowns. Over the next 5 years, we will be putting further programs in place to reduce poverty and mitigate the effects of the high cost of living, especially on the poorest of the poor. On good health and well-being, our country report to the United Nations notes reductions in maternal, infant, and neonatal mortality. South Africans are living longer and have better health outcomes. This is an important measure in the whole process of human development indexes. A key task for government over the next 5 years will be to ensure that everyone in South Africa has equal access to affordable, quality health care through the implementation of the NHI. That is an important development we need to look at. We are unwavering in our commitment to implement universal health coverage in a manner that brings all South Africans on board. And yes, we will continue with dialogues, with exchanges, with interactions to make this an important program for our people. On inclusive and equitable quality education, we've made progress with respect to functional literacy and numeracy at primary school level and in primary school completion rates. More progress needs to be done so that our children can continue or accede to a higher level of being able to read for meaning. Today, more South African children have access to early childhood development and grade R, as well as secondary school education outcomes that are continuing to steadily improve. The Child Support Grant, the no-fee schools, and expanded NSFAS funding has made a considerable impact on the lives of learners, particularly those from poor families. These social protection interventions, alongside others like the School's Nutrition Program and the Sanitary Dignity Program aimed at female learners, are helping to break the cycle of generational poverty. Minister Gwahube and Deputy Minister Dr. Mhaule have clearly said that they want another major program, that of eradicating pit latrines in schools, to be continued with. And I stand behind them and wish them well as they try to completely eradicate pit toilets in our schools. Now, this is an important program that will bring dignity to the children in our schools. And as we do this, we will be able to enable more children to complete their schooling and to access opportunities also after they finish school with dignity. One need only look at last year's matriculation exams, where learners who were social grant beneficiaries achieved an 81% pass rate. This was an important development. Many of us never thought that we would reach this development so early in the implementation of the program. Access to education expands the capabilities of young people, but it also improves the productive capacity of our economy. As the Honorable Maimane has rightly put it, our young people are competing with the world. This is a new world, one that is rapidly changing and being influenced by technological advances. A better educated, a better skilled workforce makes our economy more competitive and catalyzes growth. We welcome the call for greater investment in skilling young people for the economy and for the future, and for young people to be familiar with emerging economies. Science and technology is going to continue playing an important role in enabling our young people to play the key role in our economy. Dr. Nzimande has informed me that we are going to continue making greater advances in this area. Across all of these interventions, we are prioritizing the health and well-being of children. But we need to sustain advances we have made over the last 30 years by improving maternal and child health care, tackling malnutrition and stunting, improving early childhood education, and ensuring universal access to clean water and sanitation. With respect to the Sustainable Development Goal on the provision of basic services, 84% of South African households now have access to piped water. There may continue to be challenges in a number of areas in our country, but we now have a better understanding of the water architecture in our country and now know more fully what needs to be done. 71% of our people have access to decent sanitation, and 94% of households in our country have access to electricity. No other country on our continent has measures that come close to what South Africa has achieved. This seventh administration will focus on extending these services to those people who still do not have these basic requirements, and it will improve the reliability and affordability of delivery. This will require measures to improve the efficiency of local government to deliver on its crucial mandate. Minister Tlabisa's determination that all municipalities receive the necessary administrative, technical, and financial support for them to be viable and stable does represent the seventh administration's clear intention to improve the functioning of our municipalities. And yes, I will give him the full support as he executes this function. We agree with Councillor Stofile that we must address with urgency the governance and oversight challenges at local government level and the serious problem of municipal and consumer debt. On building and strengthening institutions, we have made significant progress in deepening democracy during 30 years of freedom through safeguarding human rights and fundamental freedoms. As parties to the Government of National Unity, we are in agreement on the importance of entrenching our constitutional democracy and the rule of law. We will continue to exert our every effort to safeguard the independence of our institutions, particularly the judiciary, the freedom of speech, the freedom of the media, and the work of institutions that support our democracy. We continue to entrench gender equality across all facets of society, and in promoting the full participation in society of persons with disabilities and persons from vulnerable groups. We have enacted into law the Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Council, which will oversee and coordinate GBV programs across government and in partnership with all stakeholders. An important focus of this work will be women's economic empowerment and on leveraging government's policy of setting aside 40% of public procurement for women-owned businesses. Now, this process is underway. We'd like to see more and more of our departments ensuring that the procurement process in our government is more and more biased towards women-owned and run businesses. South Africa is a beacon of hope and progress when it comes to the rights of the LGBTQIA+ community. These are all important aspects of our human rights culture, and we will not turn back from having this approach on the LGBTQIA+ community. I cite this progress we've made together in advancing towards the Sustainable Development Goals, not as a diversion, honorable members, from the realities and challenges of the day. We are very much alive to the challenges we still face in our country, and yet we must remind ourselves that South Africa is not in a hopeless situation, rather, that some in the opposition benches want us to believe and have sought to loudly assert with sound and fury during this debate. They were loud, they were at times disorderly, but we are not the hopeless case they try to paint. Now, South Africa is a country that has come a long way over the last 30 years. Let us never lose sight of that. Certainly, there have been setbacks and shortcomings, and I'm one of those who are first to admit that. But we have done much to recover from these and are now committed to move forward with greater speed and impact as the Government of National Unity. We have taken to heart the words of Honorable Zibi, that urgency is the currency of the times in which we now live. Yes, we have taken note of that. Our Government of National Unity is therefore determined to rapidly scale up the pace of our efforts to bring development and shared prosperity to our people by working together. And in this effort, as Minister Steenhuisen says, we need to be builders, not breakers or destroyers. We need to be weavers, not vultures. Those who share this vision of a better South Africa will find the doors of the Government of National Unity always open to cooperation and collaboration. It is expected of us all who have been entrusted with positions of leadership within the Government of National Unity and in this Parliament that we rise to the challenge to be builders and not breakers. We must be at the forefront of building a capable, ethical, and developmental state, of growing an inclusive economy and reducing poverty. As the members of the Government of National Unity, we have agreed to a common minimum program that forms the basis of the work of this 7th administration. We agree with Minister de Lille that the needs and pain of our people know no political affiliation. The policies we pursue and the programs we implement are not the property of any political party. We will therefore, each of us, equally advance and promote the positions and decisions of the Government of National Unity. I have said to my colleagues in the executive that there should be no competition among the parties to the Government of National Unity to try to undo or outdo each other or to lay claim to the policies that we collectively adopt. When we speak of transforming our country, we cannot confine our actions to building roads, factories, and houses. We cannot bring about a better South Africa if we do not give attention to the moral fiber of our society. Crime, corruption, and substance abuse, and all manner of ills continue to fray our social fabric and hold back our development as a nation. Across our nation, the disintegration of family has become a common feature. Some 60% of South African children don't live with their biological fathers, and women are often left to raise their children with no financial support from their fathers. The abuse of women and children, abuse of the elderly, and discrimination against persons with disabilities are a stain on our moral conscience as a nation. As we strengthen the capabilities of our law enforcement agencies to deal decisively with crimes against society's most vulnerable, we must intensify the work needed to prevent such crimes in the first place. Prevention begins in our homes, in our communities, in our places of learning, in our religious institutions, and importantly, also in the media. We have strayed from being a society that both cherishes and advances equal opportunity. The values of hard work, study, perseverance, steady progression, and entrepreneurship have been replaced by a get-rich-quick mindset. The corrosive lure of corruption has played no small part in this. As a government of national unity and in the upcoming national dialogue, we must come up with the measures that we need to take to promote greater respect for human dignity, ubuntu, empathy, and compassion in our society.
Order, Mr. President. If you can take a seat. Honourable Member, what's the point of order?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My name is Visvan Reddy. I'm from Umkhonto Wesizwe Party. I rise in terms of Rule 92, and I seek your guidance. I'm a new member here in Parliament, and I really look to you for guidance. Madam Speaker, the President is referring to government of national unity. Now, the definition of that is where a government is formed by the major political parties, and
Order,
after
Honourable Member.
a crisis. I want your clarity. I wonder whether you
Order,
should be
Honourable
referring
Member.
to
What
this
is your
as a
point?
government, a grand coalition, rather than a government of national unity. It could be seen to be misleading. So I seek your guidance, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. You can take your seat, Member. Indeed, there is no reference that can be argued that is wrong in terms of the statement. However, we would look at that matter, particularly on the Rules Committee. For now, we allow the President to proceed. Honourable Member Dlagude.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. The Honourable Member quoted a wrong rule. We are in a joint sitting, not the National Assembly. So that rule is quoting is wrong. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honourable
Thank you for the
Dlagude.
lesson. Thank you.
The Honourable Member did say he is new. He will need guidance, and I'm sure he has taken note of that guidance. Order. Let's allow the President to continue with his response. Mr. President.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I think the one thing that is new is that we are in a new Marquee Hall. Honourable Speaker, this should involve our faith-based institutions, civil society organizations, working in communities, trade unions, sporting organizations, youth formations, and others. Restoring the values of integrity, honesty, and empathy in our society is not something that a strategic framework of government planning can resolve. It is an all-of-society effort, which we must all be part of. The leadership must come from all of us. Just as we have a responsibility to stand firmly against racism, sexism, homophobia, ethnic chauvinism, tribalism, and discrimination, all leaders must demonstrate to the South African people that we are here to work for them and not for ourselves. We must demonstrate that we are the servants of our people. In 1994, we achieved a democratic breakthrough that many believed impossible and took those important first steps towards reconciliation between the various races in our country. As this Parliament, we must hold firm to the principles that underpin the founding values of our democratic country. We must not allow our work to be derailed by sowers of disunity. The name-calling, race-baiting, and ethnic chauvinism we have seen in the course of this debate has been regrettable. Minister Mackenzie has challenged us as a government and as a society to address the national question. This, I believe, is vital if we are to proceed to build a united nation. Not only do we need to have frank and honest conversations about how race continues to define the prospects of our people, but we need to pursue policies that resolve these contradictions in our economy and society. Honorable Sangoni Diko was clear in saying non-racialism is fundamental to the struggle for a free and equal society. Non-racialism is not a concession. It is not an act of charity. It is something that we must continue to build so that we can achieve a South Africa that truly belongs to all who live in it. The task of building a non-racial society and a non-sexist society requires that we remove the material barriers that apartheid created to divide South Africans. This is why we have placed the task of inclusive growth and job creation at the center of the work of this administration. That is why we have stressed the relationship between growth and transformation. To undertake the necessary redistribution of wealth and opportunity, we do need an economy that grows and thrives. And to achieve growth, we need to mobilize capabilities, resources, and efforts of all South Africa's people. In South Africa, growth and transformation are two sides of the same coin. We cannot achieve one without the other. We should therefore not dismiss the vital importance of ensuring that, yes, we take measures that will benefit all the people of South Africa. It is important that we should not allow ourselves to be led into the false choice between policies that are supposedly pro-business or pro-worker. We stand for inclusive growth that creates employment and that enables businesses to emerge, to grow, and to achieve sustainable returns, be they privately owned businesses or state-owned businesses. We agree with Deputy Minister Hendricks that the private sector needs to take on the responsibility of opening up opportunities for unemployed South Africans, and we have insisted that employment creation must be one of the pillars of our partnership with business. We have seen the impact of the Youth Employment Service, which we established some time ago together with the private sector, and which has created tens and tens of thousands of opportunities for young people, many of which opportunities have now translated into permanent, decent jobs. We appreciate the value and the necessity of public programs that create work and livelihood opportunities. Minister Mantashe is right that if we are to meaningfully address the unemployment crisis, we will have to focus on the lower end of the labor market where mass employment is required. This is where we need to place most of our focus on, because many of the people who are unemployed are those who are at the lower end of the labor market. Honorable Shivambu says we are living in an alternative reality when it comes to job creation. For a taste of reality, he could visit some of the 23,000 schools across the country where more than 1 million school assistants have made a tangible difference in improving learning outcomes, supporting curriculum delivery, and improving classroom environment. As a person who is so well educated, who is also reading for his PhD, he will find it very useful just to go to some of the schools so that he can see what these young people are doing. We deployed these young people during COVID to go and assist in schools, and they did not have an experience in the world of work. As they were deployed, they started demonstrating their capability. They started showing how tech-savvy they are. They assisted older teachers in our various schools. And unlike some in this House, we see the economic and social value of the work and livelihood support that has been made possible by mass public employment programs. We see the impact of the 188,000 agricultural input vouchers that have been issued to small-scale farmers to expand their production and support food security. As Minister Nyoncho says, we need to act with more resolve, more resources, and more emphasis to correct the historic injustice of land dispossession and provide people with access to land and the means to work it. We see the vital importance of the initiatives described by Premier Lessufi to provide finance, skills, technology, and infrastructure to grow township economies and create jobs. Minister Stella Ndabeni will be focusing more intently on what we need to do to support small and medium enterprises, particularly in rural areas and in the townships. 30 years ago, honorable members, at the summit of the Organization of African Unity, the forerunner of the African Union, our nation's founding father, Nelson Mandela, said, Africa shed her blood and surrendered the lives of her children so that all her children could be free. He continued to say, 1,000,000 times she put her hand to the plow that has now dug up the encrusted burden of oppression accumulated for centuries, close quotes. As this administration, we remain committed to a foreign relations policy and outlook that prioritizes the achievement of the African Union's Agenda 2063. Honorable Malema, South Africa's role on the continent and across the world remains firmly on our agenda. We don't just talk about it, We do. We act it out as the Republic of South Africa. We see the African Continental Free Trade Area and other instruments of continental economic integration as vital to our own economic fortunes. In January this year, we saw our first shipment of products to other African countries under the African Continental Free Trade Area. We are extremely encouraged by the potential of the trade area and what it presents in terms of new markets for South African goods, products, and services. We welcome the progress that is being made towards finalizing rules of origin of products and towards a pan-African payment and settlement system. As Minister Tau said, the African Continental Free Trade Area is a game-changing initiative to leverage one of the fastest growing consumer markets in the world, Africa. A growing market that is young, that is tech-savvy, highly educated, and conscientious about implementing actionable Pan-Africanism and for the 21st century. As South Africa, we are committed to silencing the guns on the continent and playing our part in peacekeeping and peace-building efforts on our continent. And we do this not because we are adventurists. We do this at the behest of the United Nations, the African Union, and our own Southern African Development Community, SADC. We have deployed members of the South African National Defense Force to support the UN, the AU, and SADC peacekeeping missions in several parts of our continent. They have served not only their own country, but also their continent with diligence and courage. We once again pay tribute to the soldiers who have lost their lives during operations in the DRC and in Mozambique, but also in our own country, as some have unfortunately lost their lives either through fires or various mishaps. And we do pass our condolences to the families of our soldiers, and we salute their bravery and sacrifice in the cause of peace in one of the world's most troubled regions. But we also pay our condolences to the families of our police officers who also die in operations and whose families lose breadwinners and their loved ones. So we dip our heads to them as well. We continue to make every effort to ensure the safety and well-being of our troops, of our police, in all the various operations that they get involved in. Our principled solidarity with the peoples burdened under the yoke of oppression and subjugation will not waver. We stand in solidarity with the peoples of Western Sahara and Palestine, and we continue to support Cuba as well. On Friday last week, as members of this House were debating, the International Court of Justice issued an advisory opinion on the state of Israel's continued occupation of Palestine and the construction of settlements in the West Bank, ruling that this was illegal under international law. The court said this should come to an end and as rapidly as possible. And we also reiterate that the occupation of Gaza and the West Bank must come to an end so that the Palestinians must have self-determination. Now, this is a separate case to the one launched by South Africa at the International Court of Justice last year. in response to the genocide being perpetrated against the people of Gaza. What this latest ruling indicates is that international momentum against Israel's continued violations of the rights of the Palestinian people is growing. Just as I finish addressing you replying to this debate, I will be meeting the entire legal team that represents us at the International Court of Justice. These are some of the dedicated South African jurists, legal eagles I call them, who have through their intellectual prowess and legal knowledge been able to lift our flag to the topmost part of the international justice system. And I am going to be thanking them on your behalf. Just as our struggle for national liberation was eventually won with steady victories, so too will the quest for Palestine statehood be ultimately realized. We will continue to pursue progressive internationalism and advance principled solidarity. Our own history and experience demands no less of us. On global platforms, we will continue to push for the reform of the institutions of global governance, including the reform of the United Nations Security Council, so that they are better able to reflect and to represent those areas of the world that do not have a voice, particularly our own beloved continent. We will continue to push for the international financial institutions and the multilateral development banks to be reformed and representative, and to provide greater financial and technical support to developing countries to meet their most pressing needs. South Africa is preparing to host the annual G20 summit in 2025. We are pleased that our campaign to include the African Union as a member of the G20 was successful. You might recall we were the only African country that has been part of the G20. We now have our entire continent represented in that most important body. So South Africa and the AU will be acting together to advance the interests of our continent. This is an important platform to advance the interests of our continent and other countries of the global south, and to mobilize support for a more just and equal world order. Last year, South Africa played an instrumental role in the expansion of BRICS. This represents favorable trade and investment opportunities for our country, which we will continue to pursue in the course of the 7th administration. And we will continue to urge more developed economy countries to meet their responsibilities and obligations to developing economies to provide support for climate change adaptation and mitigation in line with their commitments under the Paris Agreement. As the Government of National Unity, we will continuously pursue a foreign policy based on the national interests, our country's economic objectives, and in furtherance of human rights and fundamental freedoms for all. In the same speech at the meeting of the OAU in 1994, Madiba concluded thus: "If freedom was the crown which the fighters of liberation sought to place on the head of Mother Africa, let the upliftment, the happiness, the prosperity and comfort of her children be the jewel of the crown." We are now a government of national unity, formed in the course of rebuilding our nation. We are committed to putting our differences aside and working together for the common good. I'm really pleased that the members of the Government of National Unity demonstrated the unity of purpose and the commitment they have to advancing the interests of all South Africans during the debate and indeed in what they will be doing as leaders of the Government of National Unity. Behind us are 62 million South Africans who want and need us to succeed. And we will succeed as the Government of National Unity, even though others don't wish us well. Succeed we shall. As Minister Groenewald has said, we have before us an opportunity to restore and to build. So let us use this opportunity in challenging the difficult times that we live in the challenging rather and difficult times we live in. This unity will be our comfort. The unity that we are forging will be our courage, and it will be our greatest strength. It is time to get South Africa working again. Now, I want to conclude on dealing with one issue which I think needs to be observed in our debates in Parliament. It's important, Honorable Malema, that as we debate, we should play the ball and not the man. Now, you spent a considerable amount of time playing me, the man. What is important in building this country is to play the ball of development. You spend a lot of time talking about how the National Union of Mine Workers was formed. I would like you to read some books, but more importantly, I would like you to spend time to talk to people like Gwede Mantashe, who was a miner, who was one of the first members of the National Union of Mine Workers. I would like you to speak to people like James Mutlatsi, who was the president of the National Union of Mine Workers. It's a pity that Elijah Bahai, a stalwart in our struggle in the African National Congress, has passed on. I would like you to speak to people like Salai Salai, who is in Lesotho. I'd like you to speak to people like Director Matlala. I'd like you to speak to many members of the NUM who on the 2nd of December 1982 got together in Klerksdorp to form the National Union of Mine Workers. And as they formed that union, they said, we are building a shield and a spear that is going to improve the lives of mine workers. And they did exactly that. And this Anglo-American that you quote suffered the greatest brunt of the actions of mine workers. 5 years later after formation, being the largest union in this country, they embarked on a 21-day strike and stopped the entire mining industry in this country. And you call that a sellout position. That was not. Speak to Mondli Gungubele, who was a member of the NUM. Speak to many others. So in doing what you do, play the ball. The question I would ask, waar was Jay?
Marikana.
Waar was Jay? Where were you? Now, this is an important lesson. An important lesson.
Order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. Honorable members.
Marikana.
Honorable members, can you please be in order? Honorable members, I wish to remind you, those of you who are making noise Friday, you requested the presiding officers to protect each and every one of you. Can we please be magnanimous and do exactly that? If you have got a point of difference, a point of debate, you have an opportunity when you take the platform in the debates to do so. Can we please allow the President to finish his address?
Honorable Malema, nale wena re na lo hwetša nako ya gore re dule fatshe re bolele. Ke nyaka gore re iphe nako mokgomana mošabi re ke re dule fatshe re bolele ka politiki gagolo politiki yane ya kgale e ke bonang gore a o e kwešišiše gabotse e ke bonang kare o na le wa itse wa fatlega ke nyaka gore re dule fatshe go etsetsa eng go etsetsa gore ha o ema mo o iphe nako ya gore o bolele ka seo se tla isang ditaba tsa rena kwa pele. You know, o ile wa ema mo some 2 years ago wa roga papa wa ka wa re papa wa ka ne ile leponisa. And yes, I'm proud to have been the son of a policeman, a very good policeman. Ke boletse le nkgono wa hao, and nka se ke ka ema mo ka roga nkgono wa hao ka ba ne ke mo tlhompha le wena ke a go tlhompha. Ke bolela so ka obane go tshwanetse gore ha re le politiking re itehetse sa uri re thomphane re sumbedze uri re ne zwine ra khozita ndi zwine zwa ḓo isa lushaka lwashu phanḓa. Hezwi zwe wa zwi amba hafha ndo wana uri a zwi ngo fara nne fhedzi hammbi zwo fara na vhathu vhanzhi hammbi. So kha ri dzule fhasi nne na iwe ri ambe zwavhuḓi nga uri holu lushaka ri nga lu fhaṱa hani. Ni helela kwala ndi a livhuwa. Thank you very much.
I wounded Bafana.